This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and we've got a weird one to talk about today. It is a very unusual episode. It is the Simpsons spin-off showcase, and it is a lot of fun, but we're going to dive into it. Of course, joining me, as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing all right. You know, I tell you, every time I watch one of these episodes with Troy McClure, it really makes me miss Phil Hartman.
Oh,
you know,
dude, we talked about this a little bit over the PlayStation, but I just watched that documentary that they put out, and man, yeah, it's going to be, and honestly, we're getting really close in our timeline now to where that's going to happen, and that's really, really sad.
Yeah, it really, really is, and it affects not just, obviously, The Simpsons, but it affected Futurama as well, because he was supposed to be the voice of Fry, and that's why he's named Philip. But, I don't want to dwell on a sad note, because this is a really fun episode. I love the way that the Simpsons can really take on a topic and not only have like that great meta humor, but also make fun of everyone else at the same time. And they get an especially good dig on Fox, because they're really the only show that's allowed to. But we'll get into that later in the show. So let me throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the old saying down on the bayou that... Miles.
Oh, dude, yeah, we do have a lot to discuss on this one, and it's so just zany. It's really the only word. I mean, even on the commentary, which featured Josh Weinstein, Ken Keeler, David Cohen, Yardley Smith, Dan Grady, and Matt Groening, who is actually very vocally opposed to this episode, and he said even reviewing it on the commentary, I mean, mostly joking, he said it was still making him nervous just thinking about, like, what they were doing with these characters during this episode. But it, I think, all around worked. I mean, it's a well-rated episode on IMDb. It's in the mid-7s. But even the commentary themselves describes it as a weird experimental episode with unusual pacing that is just entirely full of tropes.
Yeah, especially where they talk about, and this is something that struck me, like, oh, how can they keep the show fresh after 8 seasons? And here we are in season 31 reviewing this.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they do that rib of themselves so often. It really does seem in this last season that we've talked about a lot of times now, where they thought that this was it. Like, they were fully prepared for any of these episodes to be, like, the last episode. And I think that's why there's so many times that we do see this climactic moment that just comes out of nowhere, because of they're just throwing ideas or pulling ideas from literally out of, like, the left field of not only Springfield but Shelbyville.
Yeah, I think they really gave themselves too little credit and really overestimated, although we see it in this episode, overestimated the strength of Fox lineup.
Yeah, accurate. Well, let's go ahead and dive into this one. We'll go through it like we always do, and it'll just get a little bit tangenty, I'm sure. But this was the Simpsons spin-off showcase, which originally aired on May 11th, 1997. There was no chalk gag, and there was no couch gag. In fact, we open up on Troy McClure, who's walking through a hallway of a museum with his squeaky shoes in hand, or on his feet, rather. He just turns to the camera and declares, "Spin-off! Is there any word more thrilling to the human soul? Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such TV spin-offs as Son of Sanford and Son and After Mannix. I'm here at the Museum of TV and Television with a real treat for Simpsons fans, if any, because tonight we present the Simpsons Spin-Off Showcase.
Oh, we're on a set with, that could be legitimately any set on any sitcom to we have, a $10 million per episode budget because we have all these, up and coming stars and massive amounts of CGI and
wow, was Mad About You's budget really $10 million an episode?
Oh, it was insane. But that's the way I'm looking at TV and television because, obviously the Simpsons would be part of the television side because it's, much higher quality and much classier than, say, Son of Sanford and Son.
Which is also very funny, but that actually leads us to its own special, Simpsons opening. It's not the usual cloud, it's the announcement of the Simpsons spin-off showcase. And we come back with McClure, who's talking still about the Simpsons themselves, and more, really, just TV and television in general. We see that Troy is explaining to us, the audience, that the network has asked them to fill 35 new shows into this already packed Fox lineup, I'm guessing. It's Fox, right? Yeah, they're making fun of Fox here.
Yeah, and they show the board, and it's just Fox. They have all these question marks, and it's just the X-Files and Melrose Place, and every other time slot just has a question mark on it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, and what a daunting task that is to fill all those spots. The producers weren't up to it, so they decided instead that they're going to do some Simpsons spin-offs and transplant the already popular characters into some new locations and situations. We start off with a gritty crime drama starring Springfield's beloved police chief Wiggum. But of course, we should keep our eyes peeled for some of his best friends, the Simpsons, who might just pop up to wish him luck.
One of my favorite parts of this is the fact that we see Wiggum and, of course, he has to have a sidekick because it's a gritty crime drama, so he's got Skinner with him. And they're both carrying one moving box each, and one box is labeled magnifying glasses, and the other one is labeled trench
coats. Yeah. This new gritty crime drama is Chief Wiggum P.I., and we see the opening credits are Wiggum roaring down the road in a red convertible. He's got a Hawaiian shirt combo going on, and we see him in all these situations, these action. Very reminiscent of the opening credits of a show like Magnum P.I. or even Baywatch, which you already referenced. We talked about that before. We were talking about Carmen Electra and Good Burger before we started recording, but you didn't hear this, so we referenced that earlier, and now you know why. Either way, there are all these clips and shots that show Skinner in all these crazy situations.
I did like the rooftop chase where instead of him leaping across, it's, you see the bad guy leap across the gap between two buildings, and then he jumps it on a motorcycle. And I guess it's supposed to convey how lazy he is, but I'm impressed he was able to get a motorcycle up on top of a roof of a building.
Yeah, and that's, again, the mark of, you don't really get a lot of explanation in these opening credit scenes often of how they got there, and a lot of times they're not even really things especially I'm just thinking about Rick and Morty because again we just talked about it. It's a show that we both watched this last weekend for the new episode, but we won't spoil it for anybody in case they haven't seen the new season yet, even though this show's on weeks on delay. It doesn't feel right to talk about it yet, but they show so many clips throughout the opening credits of things that have never happened on the show, and it's just how do they get there? That's not really possible. Only with Wiggum's case, there's not even a portal gun to help.
Right. This isn't an example of alternate timelines or parallel dimensions. This is just let's just take some tropes from 80s action films or 80s action drama shows and let's put Wiggum in there.
So we also learned that Skinner is known as Skinny Boy, and he, like you mentioned, is Wiggum's assistant. And of course, at the end of the credits, it also shows and Ralph, who's along
as he's putting a G next to the Chief Wiggum PI
to make it Wiggum Pig.
Yes,
nice. Like Richie said, Skinner and Wiggum are moving into their new office in New Orleans. They're carrying their box of trench coats and magnifying glasses. And they immediately have a skull thrown through their window I think it's intended to be a warning, essentially, against the unfriendliness of a new authority figure coming into the town. I do really appreciate that Wiggum, immediately just, uses it as a pencil holder, but also is mad, hey, people shouldn't be, throwing skulls on my floor.
Maybe when Skinner says, looks like you got an enemy, Chief, most folks here don't care much for law and order types.
Maybe they'll change their minds once I arrest them for throwing skulls all over my floor.
Which, of course, would not change their minds. If anything, it would exacerbate the situation.
Right? Yeah, that's exactly what they're protesting in the first place. I do like that Wiggum has a houseboat, and it's called the Big Queasy.
Oh, such a nice touch.
Oh, man, what a day. It's no cakewalk being a single parent, juggling a career and a family, like so many juggling balls. Well, 2, I suppose.
This is peak Simpsons writing for me. Those types of lines, those are just the great jokes that often go underappreciated.
Well, and they're at such liberty right now to be able to just to write and put these jokes that maybe they've been sitting on something like that for a minute, and it's just well, here we can just do whatever the hell we want, including a joke about Ralph complaining about his rubber pants being too hot.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a Simpsons episode if, we weren't talking about Ralph being incontinent or sticking his fingers up his nose to the point where he starts bleeding.
I love Wiggum here, though. You wear them till you learn, son.
Now, I do have a question. Skinner makes a comment about being born and raised in New Orleans, as he says it, yeah. Even though he says New Orleans right before that. So why doesn't he have an accent? I mean, the only thing I can think of is he later references that he's been out of, he lived in Springfield and has been out of New Orleans for 4+ decades.
Well, I mean, so I guess it's been long enough, dude, that he can't remember what, Marty's party thing is called.
Yeah, it's not really a party town.
Right, yeah. Oh my god.
Marty.
I guarantee. Yeah, we actually see that the next day, while they're going down Bourbon Street, though, there's a man by the name of Chef Paul Prudhomme who scoots by on a motorized cart and actually delivers them a plate of crawfish. I think this is a famous chef.
Yeah, he was big right around the time that this came out. So what was that, 1997? Mm-hmm. It was him, and shortly after that, or right around the same time, was Emeril Lagasse, who's the BAM guy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when they were all the rage before everybody turned into screaming lunatics like Bobby Flay and Gordon Ramsay. I
think it's hilarious too that you mentioned the BAM guy, and I know that he's parodied on Futurama.
Yeah,
Elzar.
It just came to me.
So I love though Prudhomme's line. He does the "I guarantee."
Yeah, and Skinner's will you stop saying that? It's that's all he said. That was his catchphrase.
Literally that's his one line.
But you didn't guarantee anything. You just plopped the freaking crawfish down.
But this is where we get a little bit of exposition between Wiggum and Skinner, where we learn that, Skinner hasn't actually been around in 42 years. And he did read an article, though, in Parade magazine, where a criminal by the name of Big Daddy runs the town.
Yeah, well, he won't feel so big if he messes with Chief Wiggum P.I. again, which I sincerely doubt he will. That's again, a callback to all those hour-long crime dramas that they used to have on TV at prime time. Like, well, he won't be messing with me, which is, obvious foreshadowing that he certainly will be messing with you.
Let's make a crime show that's only 30 minutes long instead of an hour, and like every episode will end like about that point in the plot where he's like, he won't be messing with me again, and then roll credits every week.
And then and he never did.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, they never, he was right. That was the last we ever heard of that guy. He was just having a rough day, and he took it out on us, but he's embarrassed about it, and he didn't take it any further.
Yeah, because all these cops are supposed to, like Walker, Texas Ranger, or even that show with Sammo Hung and Arsenio Hall, which I don't remember the name of, but I watched a few episodes, where it would always devolve from like police work into like some sort of martial arts showdown in an alley or a where.
Everybody loses their guns or just sometimes puts them down because of like honor or whatever.
Yeah, and then they just have like a whoever kicks the best wins. It's like a Rockettes audition.
So, much like we would expect in real life, Big Daddy does want to mess with Wiggum again. He's not just going to go away. And actually, the next thing we see is a shadowy figure slipping an alligator into Wiggum's home while he sleeps, into the boathouse. But fortunately, first we get another action TV trope where Wiggum takes like 10 shots at this gator and doesn't hit him a single time. Misses with everything. He's worse than a stormtrooper.
Point blank range.
Yeah. But then we find out that it's okay this time because they had corked the alligator's teeth just to send a warning. The next time they won't be that lucky.
But we don't find that out until heroically here comes Skinner, who I guess lives with Wiggum on the houseboat, because that's the only reason he'd be there in the middle of the night.
I don't know how expensive houseboats are, but maybe they need each other to pay rent.
It's entirely possible. But he comes in and he wrestles the alligator, another fun trope. But I don't know if it's just me, but when the alligator's on the bed and Wiggum's firing at it, do you think that they were trying to make the alligator look sexy the way that like they draped the blanket over him?
No, I think that that's a you thing, bro.
I that either. I was asking you.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
No. A friend of mine.
What are you talking about? So we see that Big Daddy has left his trademark calling card, which is the skull that we saw earlier in the episode. And again, Wiggum with another just great line here. Looks like we got our first case ever, skinny boy. And this time it's personal.
Dun dun dun.
The best part when he says it's like, oh, it's his calling card, and like you see the skull, but like inside the skull is literally a card that says Big Daddy as seen in Parade magazine. Which is just the best.
I also really love this joke here. It's a lot more less subtle than that one. You're absolutely right. It's a great gag where his cards are sitting there. But this next joke just gets me every single time because they cut immediately to another trope where they started saying like, Chief Wiggum P.I. will return right now, and they just immediately cut back into the show instead of going to a commercial break. We actually see the phone is ringing in Wiggum's office, and when they answer, we hear Big Daddy now talking to them for the first time. Now, you listen to me, mon ami. You listen good here. The name's Daddy. Charles Daddy.
Big Daddy, what have you done with my boy, Daddy?
Ah, the boy is fine so far. I taught him to play the spoons. Ralph has the spoons up his nose. But basically, this is our ultimatum. Big Daddy tells Wiggum, either leave town or you're not going to see your boy again.
Click.
Sounds like there was some kind of party going on in the background. Are there any parties today, Skinner?
And this is where we get that great line we talked about earlier. Not really a party town. Though, if I remember correctly, they do occasionally have a function called, Marty's something. And when they open the windows, the whole Mardi Gras parade is just like in full swing going by.
And it's just like this huge thing. And like, they don't have like these soundproof shutters. They're not even like regular windows. They're like those like little push shutters that have like slats in them. Like all the sound of raucous jazz music should be coming through. And like, I don't know how they got to the office without noticing it, but this is again another trope. Like, you know, the thing in question doesn't make any sound until it's time for it to show itself. Like in Jurassic Park, you see the dinosaur stomping around so much that it shakes all the water. But then at the end of the movie, it sneaks up on him like a ninja.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what Mardi Gras did.
Well, and there's this really kind of weird scene here too, where when Chief Wiggum runs out into the parade, he's like overwhelmed, and honestly, it very much gave me Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas vibes, where like he's like tripping out a little bit too hard, and there's all these people in masks and costumes, but we quickly find out that these masked people that are terrifying Wiggum are in fact none other than the beloved family that we're all here to talk about the show for. The Simpsons themselves are there visiting New Orleans.
And of course, Homer comes out of the giant ape head.
Yeah, perfect.
And they're not just masks though. These are like huge, like these would fit on the Easter Island statues, like these giant paper mache monstrosities. Like they look like those giant oversized mascots that they make run around the bases.
Yeah, totally. And for us at Texas or the Rangers, they do it's called the dot race, and there's just 3 people in like colored dot suits. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's just like an entire thing that fits over your entire body, but it's just like a giant head.
Yeah, it's just massive. And they just like throw them off.
But we learned that the Simpsons are there to visit New Orleans, specifically for Mardi Gras. Bart points out, when the Big Easy calls, you got to accept charges.
And Lisa's excited to hear all about the exciting, sexy adventures that he's sure to have against this colorful backdrop.
And you know, it's actually really interesting. That line right there is actually Yardley Smith or Lisa Simpson's only line in this entire episode.
And we find out why later.
Yeah, which she was actually on the commentary for this episode. We'll go ahead and talk about it since it's her one line. This is actually where it mostly came up, but Yardley was actually, she revealed on the commentary that she remembers specifically feeling very self-conscious during that segment, and like the fact that, you know, there's somebody else doing her character like made her feel very, very uncomfortable, which of course it worked out. She came back the next episode, and all has been well now for, 31 seasons, but even though she knew it was a gag and she like saw that it was a gag, she still remembers like just her like human side taking over and giving her this like uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, because if you suddenly have someone come in and like, you've been doing the same role or the same job, it's the same with anything. Like you've been doing it the same time over and over and over, and then somebody comes in and like does it as well, or in some cases much better than you, like I guess that could make a person feel self-conscious.
Yeah, good thing it's just like a fun like side episode, so it doesn't really count, but it's still fun, and it's interesting that she was on the commentary almost exclusively to talk about that.
Right, I mean it's all hypothetical.
Right.
Wow.
Well, golly, I'd love to chat, but my son's been kidnapped. You haven't seen him, have you? A Caucasian male between the ages of 6 and 10, thinning hair.
And Homer's just like, over there.
He describes his own son, though, like he would be describing him to a sketch artist back at the office or at the police station.
Between the ages of 6
and 10, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those, you're not wrong.
Right. Look, Big Daddy, it's regular Daddy.
Which is such a great line. And he's like sitting there. See, this is a thing that the Simpsons do a lot, where they have to find someone. Like when in later seasons when Homer goes to find Apu's cousin in India, and he walks up to a guy, "Are you Apu's cousin?" "No." "Are you Apu's cousin?" "Yes." Finally, they just find the person they're looking for out of a million other people. Like they just find who they're looking for right away.
Well, Yeah, you just don't have time because these are 7-minute like clips here, essentially trying to tell an entire not only tell a story but create like this side universe that like exists in the same world. But this quickly launches into a really fun chase. I do love Big Daddy's line of "Lord, have mercy, how I wish I weren't so fat" while he's trying to run away. But they actually get into a fan boat like chase, which is really cool for the New Orleans setting. I actually really specifically love this one point where I legit for a second, the first time I was taking notes, I thought my DVD was fucked up. Like, I thought it may have been warped or something. Because as Wiggum's yelling his lines, his voice gets very distorted. But it's because he's yelling into the fan of his boat. Yeah. And he actually ends up catching his tongue in it, which, oh my god, first of all, in real life, that would definitely be gone. Like, you just lost a chunk of your tongue, sorry.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it's the suspension of disbelief. And the best part about this whole like the boat chase is, first of all, like, we see Big Daddy jump on a boat and take off, and of course Wiggum is and Skinner are in pursuit, and there's a cop on the boat, and Wiggum kicks him into the water and yells police business.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of works.
Awesome. Especially where at the beginning of the episode he talked one of the big reasons he moved to New Orleans was because he got kicked off the force for massive corruption.
Oh yeah, that's right. They even point that out. But they actually end up at the governor's mansion, which I do love. Wiggum's like, "Wow, what do you suppose a rent is on a hideout like that?"
That's no hideout, Chief. It's a governor's mansion. It's been missing for 8 months.
It's not rented; it's stolen.
I did want to point out one thing about the fan boat chase, because it's awesome and it makes me laugh every time I see it. One of the guys jumps from, and this is, again, another trope where a henchman jumps from one vehicle to another, but instead of, like, getting into a fight, Wiggum just turns the fan so it blows the guy straight up in the air and launches to the water.
Which actually, makes sense. That seems totally how that would work.
Well, it's either that or have him fall into the fan and get...
Yeah, that's going to go a whole different direction.
A Halloween episode, sure.
Right, that would actually work. But of course, everything ends perfectly okay. They're able to catch the bad guy. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the bad guy swims away so that we can have further adventures at the end of the episode. Much another trope, of course. But I do like there's a bit where, Ralph has been saved, and he's like, "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you."
Better start eating, kid.
Start eating? And Ralph is, "I didn't mean it that way."
Oh, it's so great. Like, I obviously referenced it at the beginning of the episode when I threw it back to you, but they were, Wiggum's got his gun trained on Big Daddy, and Big Daddy's like, "Boys, there's an old saying down on the bayou that, blah!" And he throws Ralph and then dives and, like, slowly dog paddles away. And, like, Wiggum could easily catch him, especially because there are 2 fan boats parked outside. And he's like, let him go. I have a feeling we'll meet again each and every week, always in more sexy and exciting ways.
And again, it's very much same bat time, same bat channel, but just in its own sexy Wiggum way. But that actually brings us to the end of Wiggum PI and the end of our first act. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back for Act 2 of the Simpsons spin-off spectacular.
Hey guys, it's Richie the WizKid here from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and I'm here to talk to you about PopThreads.com, your #1 source for finding awesome nerdy t-shirts. Are you sick from not knowing what to wear when you go out with all your friends on the weekends? Well, don't have a cow, man. Go to popthreads.com, and if you use the code Simpsons at checkout, you can save 15% on all your t-shirt needs.
When we come back for the start of our second act, we are once again greeted by Troy McClure, who's actually standing and admiring an exhibit on Charlie's Angels, and I do mean admiring.
Oh yeah, it's very low cut.
Oh, hi! Welcome back to our spin-off showcase. Could The Simpsons ever have maintained its popularity without Mo the bartender. Let's hope so, because Mo's leaving to do his own sitcom. But don't panic, he's taking a familiar sidekick with him. And his best friend Homer might just stop by to wish him luck. Let's take a peek. Click. We see that Troy turns on the Love-Matic Grandpa, and we get a shot of Moe's Tavern where we can see Barney is inside.
Well, I gotta go. I got a date with the lady in front of the drugstore who's always yelling things.
And as he walks out, Mo is discouraged. She told me she was washing her hair tonight. I'm so desperately lonely.
Quit your belly aching, you big loser.
Who said that?
I did. It's me, Abe Simpson.
But you're dead.
I died, but I've come back as your love testing machine. I'm the Love-Matic Grandpa.
Ah! Which they say in the script with a great facial expression, by the way, on that scream, so use your imagination on that. But we actually get an opening credits animation for the show, the Love-Matic Grandpa.
Well, shopping for some cans, an old man passed away. He floated up toward heaven, but got lost along the way. And then, a jetliner comes by and cuts his wings off as he's ascending to heaven, which is, I don't know if that's how things work, but
astral plane.
But as soon as he starts to fall, we get the chorus. Now he's the Love-Matic Grandpa, the wise, sarcastic Grandpa.
He'll fill our hearts with love.
Mo moves aside the word Grandpa on the logo so he can fit on the screen, but a cherub flies through, and Mo actually flips that as well. Flicks that as well, I should say.
Little Cupid-looking guy, and just get lost, you.
But we open back up in the bar, and Grandpa, or the Love-Matic Grandpa, explains, and just so we're fully aware, I think everybody knows this, but Grandpa has actually possessed a love testing machine that you may find in a bar. Honestly, I don't even know if those things still exist in bars. When's the last time somebody's seen one of those in real life?
It's been a long time, but it's, funnily enough, like, it comes up in Moe's bar many, many times. Like, especially in the Flaming Homer episode.
Well, they used to be a lot more popular, I feel like, because I remember, like, when I've worked in several bars, and even when I was younger, I'd get various gigs, places, and I even remember as, like, a young teenager, you'd see these in bars all the time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and then they replaced some of the, they would keep the machine the same, and then they would just, like, have a test your grip strength thing in the back, and the lights would go up to it, like, different levels. Like, it didn't test anything. It's just like Mo says, it goes by how clammy your hand.
You're blowing my mind right now, Richie. That's why they call you the WizKid.
That's right. Not just because I urinate in public.
Grandpa gets some classic one-liners in on Mo, again, as a machine, but I do love that Mo actually says that he wrote the book on love, and Grandpa replies, yeah, all quiet on the Western Front.
Ooh.
Kiss my dish rag.
See, that's your problem. You're a crab. Ladies like sweet talking.
And Grandpa says he's going to prove it to him that he's a crab, and that, in fact, he wants him to charm the next pretty young thing that walks through the door. And right on cue, immediately, Homer swings the door open and is like, greetings! And he even kind of pops his collar and mugs for the camera, much like you might if you were entering a sitcom for the first time, as a guest star.
Oh, yeah, like Lenny and Squiggy, when every time someone was like, oh, we need this person, we need someone for like this, and like he would burst through the wall like, hello! I forget what.
Yeah.
I never.
Or even like how like Cosmo Kramer would enter, like on Seinfeld, things like that. Or even later, when our guest on the last segment comes in. What's Tim Conway? Yeah, I don't know.
About 20 pounds.
But we see that Oh, and there's actually a moment here, too, where Grandpa Simpson tries to explain to Homer that it's him, it's his father. Is that
Son, I floated up to heaven but got lost along the way.
Dad, is that really you?
Darn tootin', you lousy creep. You buried me naked and sold my suit to buy a ping pong table. What kind of a son?
Yoink. And Homer actually pulls the plug and tells Moe, call me when you get a karaoke machine.
Yeah!
But as soon as Moe plugs Grandpa back in, Grandpa respawns. Yep. That's the second time.
The second time he's pulled the plug on me. Oh, such dark humor.
Almost immediately after Homer leaves, we actually see a new arrival to the bar. A woman named Betty walks in the door and explains that she's been in a car wreck, but she's fine, but she just needs to use the phone. And Grandpa starts to prompt her. Well, first, Moe says that using the phone is a 4-drink minimum.
Which is such a Moe thing to say.
Especially when Grandpa's like, be nice, Moe is like, I said that as nice as I possibly could. But Grandpa starts trying to play lovemaker and actually encourages Betty to give the love machine a try. And Moe even offers to provide the quarter.
Which is very nice of him.
Yeah, but unfortunately he's not quite getting it because he says, hey, how about you and me go out sometime? You know, out back.
And then Grandpa starts flashing lights like,
No is on display. And so he corrects, I mean, out to a fancy French restaurant.
Ding!
So they agree to go on a date, and Moe is impressed that Grandpa was able to give him the right advice to say the right things, which is essentially not offer to go out back for your first date. You did it, Grandpa! You really are a love expert!
Dang right. Fact is, I invented kissing. It was during World War I, and they were looking for a new way.
And we once again see the plug has been pulled. Moe turns to the camera and shrugs.
I like the name of the restaurant.
La Snotteria.
Yes, and the neon sign of like the snooty French guy like sticking his nose up.
So Moe decides there's no way he's going to get through this date without the help of Grandpa, but they can't take him to the table, so they got to stash him in the bathroom, which kind of makes sense. Even though that's not the evening that Grandpa had envisioned.
But the best part is they like the subterfuge he tries to pull off by putting a suit jacket on the Love-matic machine. So it's like, oh, nothing to see here. It's like, oh, who's your friend?
And sadly, though, at this point, it gets a little dark for Grandpa because, like, he at this point is like, oh, I've suffered so long. Why can't I just die?
Yeah, so awful.
Moe is attempting to talk to his date, but it's really not going so well. He's very clearly nervous, and whenever Betty asks for Moe to talk about himself, he immediately freaks out and is like, I gotta go to the can again.
He's like, tell me a little about yourself. Myself? Oh, I gotta run to the can again.
And I love that he explains he has the runs.
That's just like the best thing to say on a date.
But
this is after he tells her that, like, you know, it's great that you're letting your looks go gracefully. You're not hung up on looking attractive and desirable.
Smooth as ice.
Oh, yeah.
So, unfortunately, though, for Moe, when he gets to the bathroom, he discovers that the bullies are actually kicking the shit out of Grandpa, the love machine, which Moe immediately runs them off, but it might be a little bit too late, and Kearney explains that they were doing it because it said I was gay.
Which... I want to know I would love to have seen the conversation that happened prior to that.
There's two sides to every story, and I would love to hear Grandpa's side of things.
Right. Especially after they like smash him up and, you know, they give he starts singing, Daisy like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well, and you can tell that something has changed, too, and the advice is now questionable, because when asking for help, Grandpa suggests, well, why don't you tell her that her rump's as big as the Queen's and twice as fragrant?
Which is just like, that's a hell of a pickup line.
Well, and it clearly doesn't work, because he walks out of the bathroom and then immediately turns around and walks right back into the bathroom, only this time he's covered in escargot.
The first couple times I watched it, I had no idea what the hell that was, and then, like, as I get older, I'm like, oh, those are snails, because they're at a fancy French restaurant.
Yep. Mo explains, you are absolutely, positively, the dumbest haunted love tester that I have ever met.
And Betty's all like, what's going on in here?
And Mo very quickly tries to explain what's happening, but it's obviously a little bit awkward at this point. I love it. It's like, well, as you may have guessed, it's inhabited by the ghost of my friend's dead father.
Why, you conniving, devious, monstrous, despicable, sweet little angel. Which is another sitcom trope.
Yeah, the instant emotional flip and reverse on that, for sure.
This is definitely a show that I could see Fox putting into development, especially around the time that they're fun of the fact that Fox would put this show on.
Well, it's better than the live-action Krusty the Clown prank show that was actually being pitched at this time, so yeah, I could definitely see them going in this direction.
I'd say it's 50-50 between those two.
But Betty agrees that she wants to continue seeing Mo, and she's basically impressed that he went through all this trouble on her behalf, and as soon as they start to kiss, we hear the audience go crazy, and Grandpa starts dinging, and we see the Casanova sign appear.
Yeah. Now how's about introducing me to that cute little payphone out front? But I'm just curious as to, I can maybe understand why Grandpa would now be sexually attracted to other
machines.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to how that would work. Like, I think I spent way too much time thinking about the mechanics of a payphone having sex with a
love handle goes into the payphone's receiver. Duh.
No. You have to kind of flick the coin slot.
That's a myth. That doesn't really exist. That's just something that payphones made up to make love tester machines feel inadequate about themselves.
That makes sense.
So we see a superimposed image of Grandpa. He is like a spectral image at this point. It comes on the screen, and we get the singers one last time. He's the love-matic Grandpa, and he's filled our hearts with love. And that brings us to the end of our second act. We are once again going to take a very short break, and we will be right back with Act 3 and the conclusion of the Simpsons spin-off spectacular.
And now it's time for our favorite part of the show. What's that say? Ads and sponsorship. Ugh, this is gonna be a real nightmare. Okay, what do you got for me? Patreon.com? What the hell is that? And they just give us money for it? Oh, if only we had that around in the 70s. Make sure you ask your mommies and daddies to send money to bestdarndiddly at patreon.com so they can drive a dump truck full of money up to our houses. Uh-oh, I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud.
We come back for our final act and are once again treated to a segment with Troy McClure. Welcome back. I'm talking with the curator of the Museum of TV and Television, Mr. John Winslow. John Winslow starts to talk but is immediately cut off. In our final spin-off tonight, the Simpsons family finally gets the chance to show off the full range of their talents. Unfortunately, one family member didn't want that chance and refused to participate. But thanks to some creative casting, you won't even notice. Show us what you got, TV.
Click.
We see the Simpsons Family Smile Time Variety Hour pop up on screen, and we're actually in the broadcast booth with none other than Kent Brockman to make the announcement for a new era in family entertainment.
Live from Radio City Music Room in downtown Springfield, it's the Simpson Family Smile Time Variety Hour, featuring the Waylon Smithers Dancers and the Springfield Baggy Pants Players.
And we see a photo come on screen.
With all the different random characters that are together. Saturday Night Live style. And now, a family that doesn't know the meaning of the word canceled, the Simpsons.
And we actually see the entire family run on stage wearing like 1970s style like jumpsuits for these variety shows that were super popular back then. One thing I want to point out real quick is while they're in the broadcast booth with Kent Brockman, the clock in the background is actually set to the time of 8:20, which was intentional because that would actually coordinate with the first airing of this show while it was playing on Fox on the East Coast. So therefore, a huge population of people would actually be like seeing the time as if it were really live in their city.
Which is a really impressive attention to detail moment.
For sure, yeah. We see the whole family come out singing.
Come along and bring the family. Come along and join the fun. Come along and join the family. Join the family. Simpson! Roll call. Remember me, my name is Marge, a TV mom whose hair is large.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Step back, Mom. It's Bart's turn now. Eat my shorts. Don't have a cow.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. I'm Lisa, peppy, blonde, and stunning, sophomore prom queen 5 years running. Go, Lisa!
And we see them all doing their song and dance until Bart cuts it off. Wait a minute. Whoa. He cuts off the orchestra. Stop the music. Where's Dad?
Here he is.
And we see Homer is actually in the orchestra pit, and he's terrified. He says he's hiding from the ghost.
Ghost? What ghost?
But before the show, you said we're having a special ghost tonight.
I said we were having a special guest tonight. Mr. Tim Conway.
What's a Tim Conway?
Oh, about 120 pounds.
And the late great at this point, Tim Conway, comes out and shakes hands with Homer. Actually is Tim Conway, voicing himself, which is kind of fun. And the Simpsons song completes with the family and Tim Conway reunited.
It's the Simpsons Family Smile Time Variety Hour.
And then this is actually kind of cool animation and very reminiscent of how these shows would actually work a lot of the times. But everybody was in a specific part of the stage, and the stage actually like separated into pieces, leaving us only with Homer and Marge at the centerpiece as it kind of went front and center for the audience.
Yeah, because the other sides would go off and they would start putting the sets on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. As Marge and Homer take center stage, we see them talk about how they have been busy as beavers getting the show ready. And Homer is kind of like, I wonder what it'd be like if we really were beavers.
And of course, that leads to the skit that they do, which is inside a beaver dam.
We see Marge and Homer are dressed as beavers. And Homer walks into the dam and says, "Honey, I'm home."
Hello, dear. How was work at the plant?
It's not a plant, Marge. It's a tree, and I've nearly chewed through it. Now, remember, my new boss is coming home for dinner tonight.
I know, and I made your favorite, steaks.
And she references towards the table where there's wooden steaks laid out all over the plates that she's placed.
Hey, could you two close the damn door?
Bart!
But that's where we live. A dam!
And once again, Lisa walks in,
Look, everybody, Maggie got her first tooth.
and we see her held up. It's in a baby beaver costume, complete with a large buck tooth.
Just
Oh.
Just the one.
Now, before my boss comes, there's something important you should know.
In a minute,
Ding
homie.
dong.
I have to get the door.
And immediately, Homer obviously sees what's coming. But Marge! And we see that when she opens the door, it is, in fact, Tim Conway, but not a beaver. He's dressed as a skunk, and he walks through the door, and everybody immediately faints.
Ooh, was it something I said?
We then get a brief, laugh-in style, which they're actually, I just watched this, 2-3 weeks ago. There's a thing on Netflix right now. It's kind of a special tribute to, I want to say it's the 50th anniversary of Laugh-In or something like that. But Laugh-In was a very popular sketch show. It had a lot of big-time comedy names go through their doors, and it's just kind of a fun show. And one of their segments always had these people popping out of these doors in the wall saying various one-liner jokes. And we kind of get a moment of that here where the sea captain says someone should be keyhauled for the last sketch.
And Judge Snyder orders it stricken from the record, and then he bangs his gavel, squeaks. Which is awesome.
And the next thing we see is the Simpsons family dressed in 1950s clothing and sitting in a soda shop.
Inflation, trade deficits, horrible war atrocities. How are we supposed to do our big musical number with so many problems in the world?
Well, I know one thing in this world that's still pure and good.
Christian love?
No! Candy! Sweet, sweet candy.
Dun 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 dun.
I want candy.
But don't you want to end world famine?
I want candy.
Or save the endangered Alaskan salmon?
I want candy.
Well, if you won't think of society's ills,
I want candy.
at least think of our dentist bills.
And then it actually transforms into the Peppermint Twist with Bart and Lisa singing and Maggie just kind of falling over, holding onto a giant peppermint candy cane. Well, I know a good song goes something like this. Do, 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 do. And the name of the song is the Peppermint Twist. Do, 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 do. And it actually cuts to Jasper, who's dressed in a schoolboy outfit with an oversized lollipop.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
And then we transition to Waylon Smithers, dressed as a cowboy and shaking his butt to Devo's Whip It. Whip it real good.
Licorice whip.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly... Yeah, whip it. Licorice whip.
Jasper singing Lollipop has been my ringtone for about a year.
Oh,
So it
nice.
makes me smile every time I get a phone call and I think about that.
So you've just been waiting for this episode this whole time.
I love when he does the little pop thing at the end. You know,
Yeah, totally.
his pictures fly out of his mouth.
So we end our candy song going back to everybody singing I Want Candy before the big finish, and we cut over to Hans Moleman, who's holding a flower.
A poem by Hans Moleman. I think that I shall never see. My cataracts are blinding me.
And not only does his flower wilt, but almost on cue, Tim Conway, still dressed in his skunk outfit, peeks on screen. And I thought I stunk. And finally, it's time for the show's big finale, where Marge addresses the crowd.
Well, it's time to say goodnight.
I wish our special guest, Tim Conway, didn't have to leave so soon.
I'm still here. Fox wouldn't spring for a decent hotel room.
He's just kidding. We'd like to thank Fox and the good people at Budget Lodge.
Well, that's all the time we have. So this is the Simpsons family saying, as you walk down the road of life,
Hitchhike. It's faster.
Bart!
We're like this all the time.
Good night, everybody! And we actually see they break out into a pillow fight, and everyone except for Tim Conway joins in. And finally, we cut back to Troy McClure one last time as he's turning off the television. That's it for our spin-off showcase, but what about the show that started it all? How do you keep The Simpsons fresh and funny after 8 long years? Well, here's what's on tap for Season 9. And we see, he starts to show a couple of images, and the first one is magic powers. Wedding after wedding after wedding. And we see Selma with Apu, B-Guy, and Itchy. So they're all Selma weddings.
Yeah, she stays exactly the same, and they just, like, fade in the different characters next to her.
And did someone say long-lost triplets?
We see Bart, and then we see, like, Jamaican Bart and Cowboy Bart, like, all in the same room, but, like, regular Bart is, like, surprised, but the other two are, like, doing some weird stereotypical things, like playing basketball, like the Jamaican guy is all dressed up. The dreadlocks in a basketball jersey, and Cowboy one is, like, playing with a lasso.
So join America's favorite TV family. And a tiny green space alien named Osmodiar that only Homer can see on Fox this fall. It'll be out of this world. Right, Osmodiar?
Damn straight, Troy, my man.
Good night, America.
Woo, woo, woo.
Now, one real quick note on Osmodiar is he is a parody of the character The Great Gazoo from the show The Flintstones, which... No, I am not having a fever dream right now. On the show The Flintstones, they actually had a space alien character that only Fred could see that often got Fred in lots of trouble with the missus back home.
Yeah, and that was a character that they added after, you know, the show pretty much ran out of ideas.
Right, yeah, just to try to pump some life into it, and The Simpsons is very much making fun of that concept. But that actually brings us to the end of the episode, the Simpsons spin-off spectacular. Rich, is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to point out before we get out of here?
The only thing I was going to point out, you actually already pointed out about the clock showing, like, the actual time that the specific third segment would be airing on the East Coast time. So that's about it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I don't actually have anything else on this one. There was very light notes on IMDb and very light notes on the commentary, so we pretty much discussed everything. But, man, we are really getting close to the end of this season altogether. We only have one more episode left to discuss before it's time for our Simpsons Season 8 finale spectacular.
Spectacular.
Exactly. On that note, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Appreciate every single one of you that clicks that download button. Big shout out to everyone that supports us on Patreon and just everybody that supported us in any way you know how to.
Make sure you follow us on social media at Best Darn Diddly. And you can also follow me at theWiz_kid23.
I am at Mr. Most Days Off, and we will be back again next week, and we'll be discussing the final episode of Season 8, The Secret War of Lisa Simpson.
Damn straight, Miles, my man.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.